we start with the last speech for this morning session, which is proving to be already quite dense. So I introduce Professor Akitomi. Professor Katsuya Akitomi is full professor at the Kyoto Institute of Technology. He got his PhD in philosophy at Kyoto University with a focus on the philosophy of religion. From 1996 to 1997, he was a Humboldt Research Fellow at the University of Munich. And from 2015 to 2021, he was the president of the Nishida Philosophy Association. He has published widely on Heidegger phenomenology, philosophy of technology, and the Kyoto School philosophers, Nishida, Nishitani, and Miki. Here, I would like to mention at least Thinking From to the Inception, Nishida, Kitaro, and Heidegger, published in 2022, and Heidegger and Greek Tragedy, published in 2023. So today, Professor Akitomi offers some considerations on technology from the standpoint of emptiness in the Japanese philosopher Nishitani Keiji, telling us something about the way Japan perceives its relationship with technology and giving us some insights to complement Jaspers' consideration on technology. The title of his presentation is The Whereabouts of Nihilism in the Progress of Science and Scientific Technology, based on Keiji Nishitani's quote. So, yes. I share your presentation. Where is it? Okay, yeah. Kitomi Sensei, dozo.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for your kind invitation and introduction, Dr. Severini. And I am much honored and pleased to have the opportunity today to this presentation. And first, my presentation has no relation with the thought of Karl Jaspers. I ask you your understanding. I read my English manuscript, but later, please have your comments and questions in English and in German. So I read. The whereabouts of nihilism in the progress of science and scientific technology, based on Keiji Nishitani's thought. Introduction. In the context of Japanese philosophy and technology, mentioning the name of Nishitani Keiji may raise some suspicions. This is because, although Nishitani Keiji is world-renowned as a disciple of Nishida Kitaro, his major works are regarded as a philosophy of religion based on Mahayana Buddhism, particularly Zen, as in his major works, Religion and Nothingness, Shūkyō to Ananika, and The Standpoint of Zen, Zen no Tachiba. However, when Nishitani discussed the problem of religion, the subject of his greatest interest was the relationship between religion and science. This gradually led him to the problems of modern technology. The problem of religion and science is strongly connected to the fundamental theme of European nihilism. The mechanistic worldview of modern science squarely rejected the Christian conception of a personal God. Nietzsche's word, God is dead, is a consequence of that European history. On the other hand, the situation is very different in Japan, where modernization was accomplished without experiencing the conflict between science and religion, and without knowing the religious background of modern Western science. Indeed, modernization of Japan had achieved a great deal until a certain point in time. However, it was the strongest product of science and scientific technology of the 20th century, namely nuclear technology, that determined Japan's defeat in World War II. World War II. Even if technology is not immediately nihilistic, the subject of nihilism can be questioned in a different way in Japan from Europe, which experienced the greatest setback in the defeat in World War II. For Nishitani, who lived through almost the entire post-war 20th century, the transformation of the world through science and technology has been a philosophical issue. In particular, the experience of the atomic bomb, along with the setback of Japan's modernization, seems to be decisive in examining nuclear technology in the last century. For us who experienced the nuclear accident at Fukushima, the problem is far from over. As long as the combination of science and technology has been a characteristic of 20th century, Nishitani's position, in which science and scientific technology are widely discussed in relation to religion, can still claim unique importance in the discussion of technology. In the following, I will first discuss the issue of religion and science in relation to nihility in line with Nishitani's main work, Religion and Nothingness. The nihility in technology is transformed into emptiness, which constitutes Nishitani's basic standpoint. The question is how the problem of science and technology can be understood from the standpoint of emptiness. However, his book does not necessarily discuss this point clearly. In the following, therefore, I will follow Nishitani's insight into the relationship between nihility and science and technology, and illuminate from there the problems we face today. In doing so, I would like to conclude by again examining the remaining issue regarding the standpoint of emptiness and science and technology. First section, religion and science, religion and nothingness. Religion and Nothingness, written by Nishitani, was published in 1961 as a new edition of a series of articles originally published in the mid-1950s. The distinctive feature of this book is that it starts from the premise that philosophy of religion in the traditional sense is no longer possible, as stated in the preface. Citation. The inquiry into religion attempted here proceeds by way of problems judged to lie hidden at the ground of the historical frontier we call the modern world, with the aim of delving into the ground of human existence and at the same time searching anew for the wellsprings of reality itself. In doing so, I place myself squarely in a no man's land, straddling the realms of religions and the anti-religious or a-religious. For to be unconcerned with religion will be taken here as already constituting a kind of relationship to religion, in a realm whose borders shift unevenly. Citation end. What is referred to here as problems judged to lie hidden at the ground of the historical frontier we call the modern world come down, simply put, to the issue of nihilism. In this book, the discussion of nihilism is guided by the perspective of religion and science. Needless to say, nihilism was first recognized in modern Western history. as long as modern science is indifferent to religion, while cutting off the personal relationship between God and man, based on a mechanistic view of nature, the issue of anti-religion and a-religion will stand out from the standpoint of science. Based on the above insights, Nishitani takes up the Christian view of God, which clashes with modern science, especially under the concept of personality, and expands the discussion to the linkage with impersonality and superpersonality. But this is because science itself is established completely independent of such a concept of personality. And in that sense, it is impersonal and in other for religion to be able to stand on the same footing as science. It must also be required to have a point where it can be called impersonal. Thus, Nishitani reviews the history of Western spirituality with the relationship between religion and science as the axis, clarifies the background of the emergence of atheism, and introduces a discussion of technology in chapter 3, Nihility and Emptiness. As the chapter title indicates, on the one hand, nihility latent in science and technology is delved into, and on the other hand, the position of emptiness developed further from chapter 4 onward is presented in contrast to nihility. The second session, the expansion of nihility by science and technology. The starting point for discussion is science, and its guiding principle is natural law. The position of science can be indifferent to its relationship with religion and philosophy because science can assert its own position based on the objectivity of natural law as the absolute truth. Nishitani explains the horizons on which natural laws are encountered according to their differences. In other words, in the world of concrete things, the domination of things appears only in the way that things realize the laws, whereas in the world of living things, living beings, the manifestation of the laws occurs when living beings live the natural law. They instinctively embody and appropriate those laws. In man, however, natural law appears in a different way in the specific form of technology. A citation. The laws become manifest in activity by being reflected through knowledge. Citation end. Nishitani recognized the couplings of science and technology in this reflection through knowledge. Knowledge of laws is already at work in the use of tools, but it is, of course, at the scientific level that the coupling of knowledge and action becomes manifest. Knowledge and technology are increasingly mutually reinforcing as each becomes scientific, and the union of the two is most thorough in the machine. Citation. Machines and mechanical technology are man's ultimate embodiment and appropriation of the laws of nature. Citation end. Within this process, citation, two elements are fused into one. Citation end. the natural law, while penetrating everything from non-living things to organisms to human beings, gains control in each of its dimensions. Conversely, the forces that use the laws of nature also become increasingly liberated from the laws, or in other words, free to use the laws. From things that are merely passive to the laws, to organisms that live the laws by instinct, to human beings that use the laws. Citation. It is only in human work that it is clearly seen that obedience to the laws directly implies freedom from their bondage. Citation end. And it is in machines that the union of these two aspects appears most clearly. In machines, on the one hand, the laws of nature work out in the works of the human beings who uses them more purely than can be seen anywhere in nature itself. And on the other hand, as man, for the realization of his own purposes, controls the laws of nature to the fullest extent. His control over nature also becomes more complete than can be seen in nature itself. As a side note, Nishitani points out that from this, a serious problem has arisen since the relationship between natural laws and things enters its final stage in the establishment of machines. That is, there is an inversion in the relationship between the one who rules and the one who is ruled. In terms of both, the domination of the law and the domination over the law. In other words, the relationship in which man dominates the laws of nature is inverted at the extreme end, where the natural laws dominate the man who dominates the laws of nature. This is a trend towards the mechanization of man and the loss of humanity. On the other hand, the domination of natural law over human beings also opens the way for human beings to stand completely outside of natural law at the ultimate point where the domination is strengthened. According to Nishitani, the field in which machines are established is, citation, a field of mutual alliance between abstract intellect in quest of scientific rationality and denaturalized nature, citation end. And this citation discloses nihility both as a ground of man who relies on that intellect and as a ground of the world of nature, citation end. Of course, attitudes toward nihility range from the impulsive and desirous to the existential, which consciously accepts nihility in depth. But in any case, the process by which the domination of natural law becomes the rationalization of human life and is seen as a progress of man includes at the same time the possibility of its inversion. That is the disclosure of a pre-rational life, an irrational, citation, subject that locates itself on nihility as it pursues its own desires unreservedly, citation end. In this way, Nishitani states while the relation that obedience to natural law is immediately liberation from its domination, is most thoroughly recognized in the established of mechanical technology. Citation. The truly real form of the situation is perverted and kept hidden from view. Citation end. The reason it is said so is probably because the expanding power of technology, strongly linked to science, causes a growing sense of the power of human knowledge and desire, giving man more and more confidence in his subjectivity over everything. Technology has been created and improved by man's attempt to satisfy his inherent desires, which are both spiritual and physical. In other words, technology is based on the attempt of man who lives under temporal and spatial constraints to overcome those various constraints. However, so long as there is no limit to human desires, there is no technological perfection. And the constant progress of technology covers the nihility that is inherently part of our own existence. The relationship of controller and controlled that Nishitani recognizes in machines has not fundamentally changed in any area of technology, including information technology, which has changed even more drastically since Nishitani's time. In fact, it should be said that the power of the relationship has become stronger and stronger without changing its basic structure and character. Nishitani sees in this relationship between machines and human beings, citation, the imbalance between the progress of science and the progress of human morality, or not so much an imbalance as a movement in opposite direction, citation end. He points out that this is manifested in the issue of nuclear weaponry. The situation here is further extended historically and socially to the political institutions. In communist countries, citation, the political institution exhibits a tendency toward totalitarianism that implies an orientation to the mechanization of institutions as well as of man. Citation end. While liberalist countries include a direction in which democratic freedom of individuals becomes the mere freedom of the subject in pursuit of its desires. It is important to point out that these different directions are fundamentally linked together. Citation. Viewed as a whole, the problem of a mechanized civilization and political institutions can be traced back finally to one and the same source, the point from which a contemporary nihilism is being generated, whether in overt or cryptic fashion. Citation end. Once again, the mechanistic worldview that established modern science combined with mechanical technology has entered into social institutions and has made man into a mechanism both in terms of social life and personal psychology. And in his attempt to escape such a mechanism, man becomes a desirous subject. In such a situation in which meaninglessness appears at the root of the world and the self and as a under the above-mentioned circumstances, lies a very modern nihilism. In the past, existential philosophy, in order to break free from the mechanization of man and his desire for subjectivity, tried to seek the freedom of ecstatic self-detachment that is possible only by accepting and standing in the nihility that defines the world and man. However, so long as the nihility of nihilism was generated by that inversion, the way of overcoming the situation by standing in the nihility must remain blocked. Here, it is a necessary requirement. To break free from nihility is required, and the possibility of emptiness is to be sought. The third section, toward modern nihilism. From chapter 4 onward, Nishitani's discussion depicts the uniqueness of standpoint of emptiness based on the conversion from nihility to emptiness, contrasting it with various standpoints in Western philosophy. Western philosophy, especially ontology, has viewed everything that exists as directed toward a substance or subject. Both substance and subject are concepts that indicate the way in which something preserves itself self-identically. Just as the concept of substance has been described as the self-identity of things, the concept of subject has been described as a self-identical basis that unifies the various capacities of human existence. This early modern self-interpretation of the human beings clearly began in Descartes' Cogito and was deeply explored by Kant, who thoroughly pursued this direction. Furthermore, substance, which had been attributed to things since ancient times, became one of the categories of pure enlightenment in Kant, which the subject thought into things. Reason, which was recognized as the core of the modern subject in Kant, has been developed into absolute reason in German idealism. However, after the collapse of idealism, the nihility, which was originally latent in the foundation of the concepts of substance and subject, now appears with a sense of reality. The significance of existential philosophy lies in the fact that it accepts such nihility subjectively and reveals it as a place of self-existence. Jaspers must have faced the same challenge in his time. However, as long as nihility is relative to existence as negativity to existence, there still remains the possibility of thoroughly transforming nihility. This is emptiness. It is the conversion from nihility to emptiness. Citation. Emptiness in the shunyata is emptiness only when it empties itself even of the standpoint that represents it as something that it emptiness. Citation end. At first glance, this argument appears to be an external take on the historical development of Western philosophy from the perspective of Eastern Buddhism. But This does not mean that the concept of Mahayana Buddhism is forcibly brought into the discussion. In the introduction to Religion and Nothingness, Nishitani states that these Mahayana Buddhist terms are borrowed, citation, only insofar as they illuminate reality and the essence of and actuality of man, citation end. It is unquestionably Nishitani's greatest contribution to philosophy that he took the concept of emptiness out of the tradition, placed it on the same footing as Western philosophy, and spoke of its possibilities, which have not been sufficiently taken up even within the Buddhist tradition, in the context of contemporary nihilism. However, from our proposed point of view, Nishitani's discussion does not directly consider the question of how standpoint of emptiness relation, how standpoint of emptiness relates to scientific technology. Although, as noted above, scientific technology and nihility is discussed in depth. That is to say, the relationship between emptiness and technology remains left as an issue to be addressed. I would like to stop here at technology and nihility to examine contemporary scientific technology and nihilism, to confirm the range of Nishitani's argument and to examine the issues that arise from it. Once again, Nishitani's discussion shows clearly that as technology linked to science advances, an inversion occurs in the controlled relationship between the laws of nature and the subject. Nishitani did not say anything about why this inversion occurs. This constitutes a problem that needs to be examined, but it can be pointed out that will as desire, as Nishitani also observed, has expanded to a worldwide scale and has swallowed up the human subject. Since ancient times, the philosophical position that the will is the power of reality itself beyond the will as a phenomenon of human consciousness can be found, even after the modern era in Schopenhauer and Nietzsche and Heidegger, who has thoroughly developed this standpoint. Incidentally, Nishitani pointed out above that the two forms of the controlled relationship have moved to political institutions, manifesting themselves as the communist and capitalist regimes that define the post-World War II world in two parts. At the same time, however, he also emphasized that different directions were actually one. This coincident with the world movement of the second half of the 20th century, namely the dismantling of the Soviet Union and the democratization of Eastern European countries, including the fall of the Berlin Wall, which drastically changed the bipolar system of the power post-war period. This does not mean that mechanization man in the communist institution has disappeared. To begin with, if the background of the spread of the above-mentioned Eastern European revolution is that the current situation of the capitalist institution became widely known to the former communist countries as information technology penetrated and expanded beyond their physical borders. As a communist institution could no longer be maintained, then we must admit the progress of science and scientific technology has greatly changed the world situation. It is man's desire and will for freedom that has driven it. Certainly, political freedom cannot be immediately equated with the freedom to use science and technology. But what is more important to note is that the expansion of the capitalist institution has thus created a world in which man's subjective desires have become even stronger and more expansive. Furthermore, if we look at today's situation, the global warming that is progressing on a global scale and the destruction of nature are rooted in the boundless desire of human beings, backed by the progress of power of science and technology. In terms of the relationship between technological progress and nihilism, virtual reality technology, which has spread rapidly since the latter half of the 20th century, has created a distinctly different kind of darkness in our world. As international affairs become increasingly complex, the various problems that are emerging in the shadow of rapidly changing scientific and technological situations are creating a sense of crisis and anxiety in people today. Moreover, if on the other hand, the convenience afforded by scientific and technological progress is masking such negative situation, then what is spreading out, there is nothing but nihilism. Conclusion. Today, nihilism is rarely discussed philosophically anymore. However, this does not mean the nihilism has disappeared, much less being transcended. What Nishitani attempts to address in his book Nihilism was the significance of us, the post-war Japanese, taking up the issue of historical nihilism, which is strongly connected to Western modernity. In the particular circumstance of modern Japan, which are different from those of the West, there is indeed a situation that can be called nihilism in Japan. Nishitani's philosophical investigation of emptiness ensured a conversion from nihility to emptiness at the level of thought. In the background, there seemed to have been Nishitani's own experience overcoming existential nihility. However, the historical nihilism that Nishitani addresses is different in scale from that of Nishitani's time. Although not covered in this presentation, as Nishitani also points out in Religion and Nothingness and other essays, the greatest technology in question in the 20th century world was nuclear technology. It was, concretely speaking, the atomic bomb, and contemporaneously it extended to nuclear technology, including the hydrogen bomb, and the same nuclear technology, nuclear power plants, has loomed large over us as a reality since Nishitani's time. On the other hand, as Heidegger, whom Nishitani also thoroughly engaged with until his later years in a philosophical confrontation, pointed out in his questioning, the homelessness of nihilism is becoming the destiny of the world. This is also the background of Nishitani's discussion of nihilism in Japan. If this is the case, it seems to me that now is the time to consider the nihilism that is sweeping over the world as a whole. In light of the above, the following questions may be asked of us through Nishitani's discussion of science and technology. That is, first, to delve into the relationship between the essence of science and technology and nihility from the viewpoint of nihilism, and to find out what is possible beyond the thoroughness of this consideration at the level of philosophical thinking. Second, to examine the social development from the post-war period to the present day in terms of the special circumstances of the Japanese modern era, and to clarify whether this can be regarded as the progression of nihilism in Japan. In addition, from the standpoint of Nishitani's philosophy, we must re-examine the standpoint of emptiness and search for the point at which it breaks with the nihilism described above. The standpoint of emptiness takes up the stance of the sieve of the phrase being sieve nothingness, nothingness sieve being, and from their views, being as being and nothingness. When it is also connected to life sieve death, death sieve life, it may be a proposal against the technological worldview that stand on the side of life and pushes forward to increase the desire for life. However, as science and technology advances by leaps and bounds, it remains a challenge for us to accept such possibilities and delve into them philosophically. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Professor Akitomi. And even if Jaspers is quoted just once in the article, I think we can see that there are many topics that we have already faced and and that we will face this afternoon. But I don't add any more. We have some time for the Q&A. So, Professor Ising.
Yes, I have a basic question for Nishitani and your interpretation. Which is cause and which is effect? So, is nihilism, which Nishitani sees obviously as a corruption of mind, is that the cause of the mechanization of society? Or is first we had the mechanism of society, and that created nihilism? Now, according to your paper, and I think it's correct, they both have the same source. They are both effects, not causes. And the cause is a certain mindset, a certain way of thinking. Therefore, the way to heal that problem, the way to overcome the difficulty is with recovery of self-awakening, religion, or philosophy. The problem is, I wonder if that's not a little bit naive, the way I just set it up. Because if you say that there's a mindset that creates nihilism and creates a mechanized society, and then they become objectified in institutions that keep them both feeding each other. Okay, so, and the correct mindset, then it means that these social structures, which are the objectification of a bad mindset, can be overcome by changing the mindset. But let's look at how technology works. You first have tools that people need. And then you discover a way to make these tools for more people and to improve them. So we have a revolution in manufacturing and research and development. Okay, so that the tools are made, we become dependent on them, then we need a system to keep these tools coming. Okay, so manufacturing, and that's actually a physical mechanization of work. But then you need a work culture. You have to get people used to doing this, to building their lives around making tools. And then in order for that work culture to survive, you have to change the education culture. So that people go to school so they can fit into the work culture and make the tools which keep us going. And then the education system takes the Geisteswissenschaft, takes the religion and the philosophy and the literature and the arts. And in that little world, which is completely under the control of this structure, is incapable of changing the structure. All they can do is make little cosmetic criticisms and complaints against it, and maybe make an occasional law to protect the rights of the individuals here or there. But the structure remains the same. So if you want to get rid of the common source of mechanization and nihilism, it seems to me you have to change social structures. That can take place in two ways, obviously, a big social revolution, but also working for alternative social structures and alternative forms of technology. And this is that whole idea of facing the structure by revolution or by alternatives is completely missing in both Jaspers and Nishitani. So it seems to me very naive to think that there's a mindset behind this whole big world that we live in. And if we just get religion and science talking to each other, we can overcome this mindset, and science will create new structures. No, science is part of the structure now. It's part of the education system, the manufacturing system. It's part of technology. It's not separate from that. So I'm not sure that any level of dialogue or philosophical critique is going to make any difference whatsoever, except for an occasional change of human rights or laws or protections or whatever. Maybe a little bit of protection of the environment even. But that doesn't change anything. So if this is necessary, then maybe the philosophies are naive. I mean, that was my point. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of stuff. So maybe you can answer to these first, then we will go on. Yeah.
Sorry, he told me it's hard to follow. I'm sorry.
It's not possible.
I mean, there's your capitalism. I mean, the first technology was not a problem until the steam engine and coal mines too.
Yes. Yes.
And the problem was not perceived as because of science as such, but because of the Luddites identified the machine as the enemy. But Karl Marx identified the problem as capitalism, the exploitation, this more and more systematic exploitation of resources. And this is what brings technology into a problematic relation with nature, where nature becomes a reserve to be exploited rather than to be cooperated.
In Japan's modernization, the first thing that came to Japan was the Industrial Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
The revolution of education
Mm-hmm.
and of the social institutions of Japan,
Mm-hmm.
they came later. The Industrial Revolution was a foundation, and that was the one thing you couldn't change. So within those limits, modernize.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the problem, right?
So maybe that's why that clash between religion and science didn't happen in Japan, right? Because like the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution, like you're saying, right? It came when they didn't have this whole process of developing science and then the industry as it's, I don't know, like as it's.
Yes.
Yeah, let's give Professor Itami the possibility to answer.
Very difficult problem. As you said, Nishitani's discussion or agreement of nihilism is in his book Religion and Nothingness thoroughly thought to the ultimate point. So this situation I called the nihility. And so in psychological or side and social side, in both sides. And these two, both sides are, both sides become one, fuse one. And so, Nishitani, according to Nishitani, the diary has two aspects. In one side, as existence, and the other side, history. So the problem of nihilism is, according to Nishitani, the problem has nihilism has existential aspect and historical aspect. And in the former side, Nishitani himself, in a sense, has existentially overcome his nihilism. But as I said in my presentation, the historical side of nihilism was not resolved by Nishitani's thinking. As you said, very naive, various problems are combined together. So it is so. Nishitani shows in this book the standpoint of emptiness, but as I said, how the standpoint of emptiness can overcome the socially or historically, politically widespread nihilism. That is the very difficult problem. I can show the clear.
Yes, no, that's it. You said better than I did. But
Yeah.
Thank you for your lecture. I just want one small question, and the other is really very key question by Jeanne. The first one is on page 2, the second paragraph from the bottom. You said the science itself is established completely independent of such a concept as personality. You find that very cool.
Yes.
I understand what you mean, the personal concept of God in the Christian belief, and this side of understanding of this material is absolutely impersonal. But as long as, can you find the place I mentioned now?
In the bottom.
The second paragraph from the bottom, you said the science itself is established completely independent of such a concept as personality, etc., etc.
Where?
Yes,
Here. Modern science, especially under the personality and
Yes.
I can understand what you mean, because the science deals with the material, which is absolutely impersonal. But as long as we see the history of the science in the Western culture, for example, according to Whitehead, the the emergence of this science in Europe has two historical background. First one is the belief in the God, the creator. And they think the God has created the world, God as person, God as intelligence has made this world. So we can find this rule of creation by investigating this nature. So that means the belief, the faith in the God as the person that brings the science. One fact as one factor. So I think we cannot say so simply that the science has nothing to do with the personal concept of God. Because science has also arisen from the belief in the God as the person who made the world intelligibly. So we can find according using the logos God has given us, the small logos, we can find the rule of creation in the nature. Of course, there's the other side that is the Walter said, there are another ground of this background of science, that's the Greek tradition of destiny. So everything is determined by the destiny. There's no exception. So these two background has brought the science. So I think we can not say so simply that the concept of personality has nothing to do with the science. But that was my first question. The second question is maybe it has related to his question. As long as I understand Nishitani, he think the historical nihilism, for example, the European nihilism by Nietzsche, it give him the moment to think that human being is not anymore the subject of himself. For example, if we use the word of Freud, for example, he said the history of the European has experienced the human beings, the three times of this, what was that he said, the Copernicus, Darwin, and Freud, they find that human being is not the subject of himself. So I think Nishitani has learned from the historical nihilism to think how elaborate that way of thinking. Human beings not, I am not the subject of myself. So the human being is controlled by this nihil. And then he can, through that historical nihilism, he can experience the personal nihilism, and then he can get the enlightenment, the Buddhist enlightenment. This nihil, that is the authentic, the subject of human being. So that is the emptiness or the shunyata. So in that sense, you said the relation between the controller and the control. The modern technique was taught us the human being is not anymore the controller of the natural law. Human being is also controlled by the machine that he himself made. So in this technique also taught us the human being is not the subject, not the host of himself. And in that sense, I can understand that you said the modern technique that give us the moment to think of the nihilism once again, anew. So in that sense, technology also can help us to think about the human being, or the real, the authentic, how can I say, the essence of the human, who the human being is. So in this sense, I think the technology also can help us to think about anew who the human being is. Of course, that does not solve all problems, but the question by Jeanne still remains, I think, how can we control this huge the buildings of the technologies? But in any way, I think technology is not the enemy of human being. It helps us to think about who I am. Sorry, I forgot.
Thank you very much for your question. And the first question, is it true that European tradition has two backgrounds, but here, Nishitani, does, here, Nishitani doesn't discuss the one Greek background. Then the modern scientific worldview has directly only the Christian background. Of course, Greek and Christian backgrounds, there are two great two backgrounds behind the European scientific worldview. But here, Nishitani in the behind the progress of scientific worldview lies the Christian the in the progress of scientific worldview, European worldview, lies the Christian thought more strongly. それちょっとよく、And your second question is, could you speak more? Or können Sie sprechen auf Deutsch? Or
日本語でもいいかもしれない。
Wait a moment. I mean, since it's already late, we can, finish this discussion at lunch while we go also, because, then we can switch also to Japanese. It's fine. So, I think we can close here the session so that we can start again on time later. So, we thank Professor Akitomi for answering the Q&A session.